Welcome to The New Next, a podcast that addresses current events and how they will impact the future. Co-hosted by the inquisitive public speaking champion, Mike McVeigh, and energy, economics, and technology expert, Matt Jensen. Join us as we explore all things energy, economic, tech, and political, and how they will affect our future. Podcasts typically grow by word of mouth. If you know anyone who would enjoy this content, sharing this in a message or by posting on social media would mean the world to us. Thanks for listening, and let's get started.
Speaking of prices, lithium, unlike every single thing else that seems to be going on right now as we're transitioning to a post-pandemic world, the investments, specifically the lithium mine investments, are lagging behind what the supply chain is wanting. And and you gave a wonderful article that we probably can put in the show notes, no pressure, talking specifically about from Quartz, lithium mine investments aren't keeping up with the EV supply chain. And was there any specific comments you wanted to make on that?
Well, there's been a lot of pushing to move to EVs as a solution, but and also put mass energy scale batteries to back up wind and solar projects all over the country. But so far, the most efficient sources that we have to have dense storage of this require lithium in it. That lithium itself has gone up about, I think at least 600% over the last year and a half. And it's really affected the economics of batteries and battery storage. And it's really changed a lot of things. I thought this was an interesting article. That's why I sent it over to you.
Yeah.
Was because it's people want to invest in the sexy, but they don't want to invest in kind of the fundamental things. I think that's kind of like what a lot of our podcast has talked about, is that the fundamental things that you need to run an economy are, and oftentimes being said that they're evil and stuff or whatever, but they make a lot of the other things possible. And I don't know if this is for ESG reasons or whatever, but the investments in lithium mining has really lagged. Like, there's one mine that might come on the US in maybe next year or something like that. They're still trying to get the permits figured out. But the permitting process to mine is at the federal level in the US, and that usually takes 8 to 10 years if you're lucky. It's a lot more sensical in places like Canada and Australia, which are both countries too that I think care about their environment, and they're democratic countries. So I think oftentimes in the United States, we try to create the future before we get all our stuff in order. And this is just a perfect example, because it's really the Rivian CEO is electric car truck maker, talked about this extensively lately, that they were having to reduce their projected vehicles that they were able to build because they just can't get the batteries. There's been so much capital that has gone after creating advanced battery manufacturers in the US without a lot of thought of where they get the raw materials for that. And we have this in the US. We could do it here. We have the legal structure to make sure that it's done in a environmentally friendly manner as much as you can. But it's just not like you can't make things way more difficult and at the same time make it easier. And So
Yeah, it's you can have simplicity after complexity, but that doesn't mean that you haven't built up the things necessary. I mean, I think it takes a lot more work to make something that's complex to seem simple. But you're what you're saying, I'm agreeing with. I'm just saying that sometimes we get simplicity and complexity mixed up with the actual amount of work that needs to be done.
yeah, and there's a lot of more money to be technically made in the advanced manufacturing, because you can get like a higher spread off of it because you got more technical added value. So I think a lot
Right.
of people want to, especially our political system, they want us to have these sexy industries because they have more spread to enable higher wages and all this stuff. But there's just, it's gotten to a point that you're so reliant on other countries to produce the things that you need, that you're left in a situation where China and Russia control 80% of the future minerals, because
Right.
they've recognized where the world's going and they're invested in everything. So it's sometimes our want to be good overrides the reality of what the world is.
Yeah, and this is a really horrible analogy, but it's what I thought of as soon as you started talking about this, about what we want as opposed to what we need, kind of the fundamentals. Tim Duncan from NBA is known as Mr. Fundamental,
Yeah,
and Kobe Bryant.
love Tim Duncan.
Both of them had careers that overlapped most of each other. They both ended up with 5 rings, whereas Tim Duncan won 4 Finals MVPs. Kobe won, I think, 2, I believe. And then also on top of that, they both have this stellar career, but Tim Duncan is left off of more list of the greatest players of all time by fans because he didn't make any noise. He just came in, did his job,
the Admiral,
and went home. Yeah. Whereas Kobe, and it's not taken away from Kobe's game. I mean, he is still one of the greatest players ever, but the flash and the pizzazz, people don't realize, he was getting up at 4 a.m. in the morning and playing till usually midnight,
yeah,
trying to prepare his body. So even then, both of them did these things that no one wants to do to become 2 of the greatest players ever to play the game. And so in that same light, you've got to do the things that are absolutely necessary to get the job done. You can also do the fun stuff, but you have to do the important stuff first.
Yeah. And I find a lot of stuff that's not sexy really sexy. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But,
yeah.
The Admiral had one heck of a hook shot, but Kobe was like a dunk champion. So but you need both type of players to make a winning team. And I think you're talking about like a superpower championship team, like let's take the Chicago Bulls, right? They had Tony Kukoc, who was like a stellar 3-point shooter. They had like Luke Longley and Dennis Rodman that did the basic stuff and really good at defense. And had Dennis Rodman not been in such a flamboyant character, he probably would have been thought of more like he was when he got in the league with the Pistons, right? Which was not one of the greatest players ever. You had Scottie Pippen, who I think is one of the greatest players ever too. That is kind of like the Admiral too. A lot of people don't think about him. And then you have Jordan, who, in my opinion, was the greatest player ever. Maybe not, if they played one-on-one necessarily with LeBron, but I think he was the greatest player ever. He did so much for the game. This is another discussion, but
this is gonna definitely.
Yeah. but
no, I got you.
Yeah, and it's kind of like Shaq and Kobe too. I feel like China these days is kind of like the Chicago Bulls, because they got all, and Steve Kerr. I forgot about Steve Kerr, but. Because they paid attention to all 5 positions, And maybe that's like the Golden State Warriors now too. And the U.S. is like the Phoenix Suns. So
Probably more like the Dallas Mavericks, if anything,
yeah,
because they have one star and only one other starter that would even be considered a starter on another team.
yeah. So the U.S. in this whole mineral batteries sort of things is going to have to go out to free agency to get what they need to turn in a winning team, because they haven't been focused on building it from the ground up in the beginning.
Yeah. And as much as I want to continue on basketball metaphors, because I could definitely do this for a long time,
If you want to learn more, find us at thenewnextpodcast.com or matthewadjensen.com/podcast, where you can suggest a topic you would like us to cover. If you enjoyed what you heard, share the podcast, tell a friend about it, or rate us 5 stars. We appreciate you listening.